Okay, so if you haven't guessed already, I'm not like an account person that's giving talks all the time. And maybe you can tell by the length of my trousers that I work in the creative department at Advance. Uh, I'm a copywriter, concept developer, whatever you want to call it. And I guess, I mean, I've been in Denmark for about 15 years, so I've understood a reasonable amount of what you've all been saying. Um, but I wanted to sort of start with a question, really, and it's this one. Can you remember what it was like to be a human being? You know, remember like shaking hands or hanging out in huge crowds or hugging each other, hugging clients actually, which was something I had to get used to when I moved to this country. Um, Now, there's definitely something missing in our lives at the moment, and that's because of the situation that we're all in. And it means that some of the things that we used to take for granted become exotic. And okay, I know that this is like the kind of pictorial equivalent of starting your school essay with Webster's defines human connection as, but I just put it into Google and these are the kind of images come up, and you can sort of see how ubiquitous this idea of actual physical contact is. It's something that is not new though, because we have got used to the idea that we can rely on technology to fill this gap. And with the amount of sort of pub quizzes on Zoom that I've done, I know that that's more true now than ever. The question is, it not only does it tell us how much that technology promises us to reconnect, it also probably shows us more than anything else how it often fails in really making that connection. Uh, and the statistics sort of show us that, and there's no news to anyone, social media, there's a huge sort of kind of mental health issue with social media. But I think it's sort of dangerous to sort of just say, okay, social media is bad, take away everyone's phones, especially the kids. But actually, and this was something I read in the Atlantic, which is, it's, you know, there's another side to that story, and that is that for some, social media technology provides a vital social connection. But what it does is it tends to sort of amplify the risk of those that are disconnected. So we have a sort of a duty of care to try and make sure that our humanity transcends the medium and actually connects people. Um, so technology is like a double-edged sword that challenges us to be better at being a human being. Um, and what is true in society also turns out is just as true in marketing. Now, Advance, we're an independent agency, but we lucky that we get the best of both worlds. We're a member of Worldwide Partners, which is one of the world's biggest networks of independent agencies. So we get to hang out, we get to use people for data collection and to test ideas. And they have recently done a study in association with the Global Web Index to sort of see what the trend is in terms of our relationship with technology. And so while we are becoming even more connected than ever, we're actually sort of growing more resistant to technology. I think we saw some great examples earlier of the kind of trash that fills your inbox and just makes you want to hide away. And we're all aware of all the other trends of trying to sort of detox from the web. And what they have concluded is that we're actually moving into a time of tech angst, where we, you know, just are resistant to the technology. We're kind of addicted to it in a way, but we're kind of in this struggle constantly of understanding what our relationship with it is within it. Um, Now, how does this affect marketing? Well, it's important because a personal relationship, it's proven that this is actually going to be an influence making when making decisions. And another conclusion that Worldwide Partners come up with is the idea that we need to be moving, or this is their conclusion. We can have a debate about this afterwards, but they feel that we need to go from personalized marketing to personal marketing. And I think that's kind of an important distinction. And I'll kind of refer to one of my sort of advertising heroes, this guy, Bob Hoffman, who has a blog called The Ad Contrarian, and I recommend anyone to read that. It gives you a daily dose of common sense. Of course, I'm biased because he's also a copywriter. And he wrote a blog article which was based on the research of a guy called Kevin Simler, who's sort of saying that actually the way we think advertising works is not the way advertising works. It's not about a brand making a nice connection with us and having a personality with us, and then when we're in the store, we think kindly of them. It's actually about a shared experience. And so if you have personalized marketing where only you are the one seeing the message, you're not actually sure if everyone else has seen the same thing as you. In fact, you can almost guarantee they can't. And then bang goes your water cooler kind of experience where you're looking to buy into a brand so that it becomes like a social signifier, and which brands are culturally acceptable and which are not. And the Super Bowl ads and all of the kind of like big budget above the line advertising becomes part of culture in that way. It becomes a kind of a signifier for our identity. Now, Bob Hoffman's written this book. I'm not affiliated with him. I don't have any kind of discount codes to give you, but I highly recommend you pick up a copy of this book. So where does this leave us? What can we do about this? What I'm going to sort of talk you through today is what goes in here. What is the solution then? We have huge access to data. We have razor-sharp targeting for our target audience, but what do we say when we get there? And again, I think there were some great examples earlier of how often the message lets down the possibilities of the medium. So I'm going to go through just 3 points that are things that we try and keep in mind at Advance when we are creating communication for our clients. And the first is the answer means nothing if the question is wrong. Now, what on earth do I mean by that? Basically, as creatives, we rely heavily on our strategists to hand over a lot of information, a lot of studies. But quite often, sifting through that, you realize that there's certain questions that no one bothered to ask. We were recently doing some work on for a Johnson & Johnson client, which was to do with mouthwash. And they had a lot of data, loads of data. We sifted through it all. We understood everything about people's habits, about their how they use mouthwash, what their oral care kind of regime is, but we couldn't find anything that tells us why people do or do not buy their product. And so as a creative, when you're trying to come up with a message to sort of really be targeted and understand that and get that real insight about how do we solve the business problem that we have, there was nothing. So we find that it's really important. This is not just, we're happy that we have a kind of a relatively flat organization at Advance so that we can sit down and we can talk to the strategists before that they go and ask the questions. And so, for example, a really good example is the work we did for Norn, which is one of Denmark's biggest shipping companies. It's not the big blue one that everyone always thinks when we say we've got a Danish shipping company. We went to meet with them. They wanted to have a brand new brand story, everything, identity, launch event, and a whole new PowerPoint presentation, which is always the thing that they want. And then we went in. Our first impression when we met them was, there's something going on here. There's this sort of dichotomy here. We're meeting these people. They're super intelligent. They've got all of these analysts there. They rely heavily on data, but then they've also got port captains who work locally, who know by looking at the clouds what the weather's going to be like. They're hundreds of years old. They have this rich history, but they're trying to sort of move into the future. And I think that they felt that there was a crisis there because these things didn't fit together. But actually, we had this instinct that maybe that's actually what makes Norn, is this idea that they possess all of these different types of intelligence. And so we settled on that hypothesis that maybe this is what makes them strong. Perhaps there are stories within their organization. There's questions we can ask to understand if this is actually the case. So when we put our research questions together, we included those kind of points, and we spoke to members of staff throughout their entire organization all across the world. We spoke to other stakeholders, customers, and our hypothesis was proved correct. And because we'd asked the right questions, we then had really good material for creating good communication. Just an example here. This is a guy called Henrik. He goes to Japan 6 times a year. He understands the importance of a human connection. This is something that perhaps if we talked about what are the business goals of your department and all of those things, we wouldn't have found out. But by talking to them and trying to test out this hypothesis that perhaps things like emotional intelligence, relationship building were also assets for their brand, we were able to kind of like bring that through in the communication and provide them with a brand platform that everyone in the organization could look at and nod and say, yes, that's us, rather than us going in and trying to sort of redefine them. You know, that's one of our sort of little things that we keep in our head at Advance, is that we always want to try and rediscover the essence of a brand rather than try and reinvent them. People often react to the market and say, we need to change because everyone else is changing. And that's actually the point where you should go back and say, but who are we? Why do we make the products that we make? Why do we go to work every day? And that's where the true identity lies. And that's something that's uniquely ownable by yourself. No one else can own that. And an interesting thing about this guy who goes to Japan all the time, there was a kind of a apocryphal tale, which turned out to be true, which is someone once wrote a contract on a napkin for a Japanese client. They were just down the bar, and he said, there you go, billions of krona, we're good for it. And that is a story that, you know, that did the rounds whenever we were speaking to people. And that's something, another story we can bring to life. It says everything about that business, that they can rely so much on their back office to be able to go out there and put a napkin on the table. And because this guy has spent years building the relationship, they trust him. So the sort of takeaway from that is to use data to explore a hypothesis, not to find one. Rather than sifting through loads of data and say, what does this mean? Meet with people, understand what they're about, understand the history of the brand and who they are, have a think, and then use the research to sort of support that. The next point, when it comes to generating creative concepts, data is great, but stories are better. This links on from this idea of the napkin. And you know, data allows us to see patterns where perhaps we couldn't see them before. But sometimes it kind of just gets in the way from really understanding the humanity behind that. And, you know, we're all people, even marketing people are people. So this example is Coloplast, one of our biggest clients. And they get that. They understand that they need to be human. They don't want to just talk about their products. They want to talk about their users. And they don't want to talk about their users. They want their users to talk about themselves. And so for their latest corporate campaign, they sent us to 6 countries to speak to 9 different users. And we actually went and sent our guys to go and take the photographs and to sit down and interview them to get to know them. And it means that you get to meet people like this and get their real stories, which communicate far more than just 9 out of 10 users prefer whatever. And so it is also interesting for us to be there, not to outsource this to someone else, to be there so that we can remember what it was like to talk to these people, and we can use that in the development of the creative assets. So here the sort of point really is to sometimes to have the courage to step aside and let the stories in your business, and that means your customers within your organization, to speak for themselves. Because quite often, the words people use to describe their experiences, that tells you how they think, not just what they think. Data's great at telling us the facts, but as a copywriter, when I'm trying to think, okay, well, what language do people use? How am I going to resonate with the target group if I'm just like Joe copywriter who's trying to just sort of give my take on something? I need to understand the words of the people we're communicating to. Number 3, reach through the tech and make a connection. And this is a kind of a Lego case. It's always nice to be able to put that logo up there. And here, this was sort of more about understanding their target group. They needed to support this product, which is Lego Jurassic Park, or Jurassic World, sorry. And here we needed to talk to these young kids, and our natural reaction would be, let's make a cool film that they can sit through for 15 minutes. That target group isn't going to buy that kind of thing because they're gamers. They're used to sort of having things their own way. They're used to interacting. If they can't be the center of the attention and affect the outcome, they're not interested. So instead, what we did is we used the YouTube platform to create a kind of choose your own adventure game, where at the end of each clip, they had to decide what to do. And the great thing about that is that the kids loved it, but also it really sort of tied into YouTube's algorithm, which rewards those longer viewing times. Quite often we get clients giving us recommendations saying it needs to be under 10 seconds and the logo has to be visible from the first second. Well, yeah, if you've got a shit story to tell, then you need to front load with all of the information because no one's going to watch to the end. But if you make a film really engaging, if you make a piece of content super interesting, it doesn't matter how long it is. We often look in the editing room, it's like, this doesn't feel long, even though it is long, or this feels really long, even though it's only 5 seconds long. It was quite successful, actually. We were on the top of the kind of ads leaderboard at the end of 2018. Got 10 million views on YouTube after only 3 months, and one Spanish version actually got 8 million views just on its own. So we're kind of quite proud of that one. So understand your audience and make the engagement genuine. If you really understand what they're after, then it's easy to meet them at eye level. So those are sort of the things I would like you to take away from this. And what was supposed to happen next, there's 2 names up here on this board, is our client SimCorp and their marketing chief, Susan Peter Marcus, was going to join us to have a bit of a chat about the work we've been doing with them. But then she called us yesterday to say that SimCorp have sent everyone home. And because she's a human being and understands a human connection, she thought that the optics might be a bit weird if she was out here kind of promoting their business. So we are actually going to do a podcast version of the conversation that we were going to have that will be available on our website. But I'll just quickly go over their story. And SimCorp are a really good client. It's a very technical product that they're selling. But they had already made a decision to pursue a more human connection. They understood their target group. They understood their culture as a brand, and how they could differentiate themselves was to appear more human. And so they briefed us, and it was quite honestly one of the best creative briefs I've ever received because it had all the insights already in there. They knew who they were talking to. It was very outside in. They'd come from a place where they were just talking about their product, and it was completely, opaque, and you couldn't really understand who they were. And they realized that one of the growing problems within the financial services industry is this growing millennial workforce who really don't want to have to manually enter data. And that's kind of what they're being asked to do. And so they asked us to create a campaign which was trying to tap into that idea of people understanding their worth. And after all of my education and after you hiring me in 5 interviews and all of that kind of thing, this is really what you're asking me to do? So we kind of borrowed a bit from the language of the day and created this campaign where we had like, seriously, when you've invested all that time and money recruiting the most talented financial minds of a generation, does it make sense to have them spend 30% of their time on manual tasks? And so we've defined seriously as an alternative form of the word seriously, often used as an expression of incredulity at being asked to engage in a manual task that makes a mockery of your skills and knowledge. They really like this, but we never got to run it because things happened. Life happens. And it was interesting that when they came to us and said, we feel like it's not like the message is irrelevant, but to have millennials sort of complaining about doing manual tasks, at least they got a job. At least they're safe in some way. And so they asked us to sort of go back to the drawing board. We came up with, first of all, it was Corona. And then it was, okay, times are uncertain. But this is the financial services industry. They make money out of uncertainty. So this is an opportunity. And we came with another version of the campaign, which was all about opportunity. And then Black Lives Matter sort of happened. And in the US especially, it was like, are we really wanting to make people out as sort of like trying to milk the world for all it's got when actually we really need to come together and talk about what our responsibility is in the world? And that was the key word. This is some work we're still doing with them, so the campaign hasn't launched. But it is interesting because this journey allowed them to look within their own organization, within their own category, and understand that perhaps they could be the voice of responsibility. and connect that to the services that they provide so that they can be taking a lead in the category, but also speak with a tone of voice that resonates with the current situation. So anyway, for more details on that, go and visit our podcast once it's recorded and up. So we only found out yesterday she wasn't going to join us. So this is a little bit shorter than we expected to do it, but that's what we have for you today. Cheers.
Okay. But then we have time for question.
Wonderful.
Right? If there's any, are there any question? I have one then, but I actually think I will start asking the question to the audience because you talked about this tech angst.
Mm-hmm.
And if we take aside all your titles, the things you're actually doing at your work, and just talk to you as private people, how many has tech angst? Are there any? Be honest now. Nobody at all.
I don't believe that.
No, they are not. Really, nobody. Okay.
Who has to limit the amount of time they're using their phone? There you go. But you have a phone. That crisis, that dichotomy, that's the tech angst. That's the not really understanding what your relationship is with it. And it becomes a sort of a thing of shame. And, you know, when I think about all the opportunities that ad tech afford us, it shows us how we can reach people. But quite often it's done in such a clumsy way that it turns us off. And actually it's like, I don't want anyone to know anything about me. You know, when my girlfriend sends me a link to some shoes she wants my honest opinion on, and I click on the link and then all I see is high-heeled boots in my, you know, on all of my web pages. The increase in ad blockers, you know, we're ad people. I hate banner ads. I block everything. And I'm producing this stuff. So there's some angst in that. What is our relationship with these channels and this technology, and how can we, by injecting a bit of humanity in it and understanding that it's the same people clicking on this thing that are producing it, maybe we might be a bit more kind of conscientious about what messages we're putting out into the world.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm a little bit tech angst.
Yeah.
I need to be honest. It's the same, you know, cookies, Anabats. I have a special email for all of the shit you have to write your email. So I'm there as well, but again, working with it. So it's quite interesting the way that you're talking about it.